Hey, Rich, can you hear us?
Yes, I can, Chelsea.
Great, thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Hey, Rich, can you hear us?
I can. Is this a test again? Yes, I can, Chelsea.
Great, thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Hey there, everyone. We're just waiting for another commissioner and then we will get started.
All right, good evening, everyone. I'm going to call the HAB meeting to order. I think it's 5:34 p.m. Chelsea, remind me, we have someone that's taking minutes or not?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. That is a gift. Yeah, that's huge. All right, so we are back from a summer break. So I don't believe we have any minutes, at least maybe accessible, so.
No, I don't think so. I'm trying to remember, the last meeting, Ethan Schaefer was staff, and I don't know if he had prepared minutes or not.
We weren't able to find out before yesterday. I spaced it. So
Okay.
if there are, we will have them on the next month's agenda.
Perfect. And I'll do some digging too to see if there was anything I was missing. So,
But yeah, for the record, we do have a dedicated person who's doing the minutes for us. So from here on out.
wonderful. That is great. Thank you. So let's see. Do I need to do any kind of roll call or anything? We have Crystal Carr present, Aaliyah German, Michael Quintana is on the board, Allison Gerbig chair, Amy Mock is excused. And I think that's all that I have on my board, so. Any public comment on non-agenda items? I think you're on the agenda and you're there to support or. Michael's online, and then I think this is also the presenters, another presenter, but he's online, so. Excellent. So let's just roll into that new business presentation of the, you know what CON stands for, CON CEPT.
Yes.
There we
So
go.
Chelsea Royston for the record. And forgive me, I'm probably gonna slip into what the other boards see more. I'll be presenting a concept plan. We don't need to do anything really formal with it with this board, as this is not a quasi judicial board. However, just kind of due to a lack of framework, that's how I'm going to present it, is as it was seen by City Planning Commission last week. So hold on
Excellent. Thank you.
just a moment. All right. So again, we're discussing a concept plan at 123 Manitou Avenue, which was previously developed with the La Fun Motel. The developer is Paragon Realty. They are also the owner. And I'm just going to give a brief overview of what they are proposing. And then the applicant is here to add some more color to it. So I'll just be presenting kind of purely from a planning standpoint. Like I said, it was the former site of the La Fun Motel. It was demolished in 2023 and is currently vacant. The site is 2.2 acres. It is unsubdivided and it is zoned commercial. The commercial zone district has a maximum height of 35 feet and a maximum density of 20 dwelling units per acre. Their concept plan proposes two 39-unit apartment buildings, which is 78 units total. They do propose 3-story buildings that step back along Manitou Avenue and is compliant with the maximum height. They are proposing 123 parking spaces, which is compliant with code requirements as well. However, the density that they are proposing is 35.4 dwelling units per acre, which would require a variance to the density. They are proposing a mix of studio, 1- and 2-bedroom apartments. They're also proposing pull under garages and amenity space. So the quasi judicial applications that will be required are a major development plan, which includes all of those documents there, a geologic hazards evaluation, landscape plan, a drainage report, traffic impact analysis, a lighting plan, and an ecological characterization study, since this site is within 500 feet of Fountain Creek. Again, it will require a density variance, a minor subdivision as the site is currently unsubdivided, and a grading permit. So where we are currently, we have not received a formal application yet. We have received an application for the concept plan, which is done separately, and it is an optional application. So the owners and applicants have decided to submit the concept plan for preliminary feedback before undertaking that really cost intensive, time intensive, labor intensive design and engineering work. So from that point, if they decide to move forward, like I said, they presented to City Planning Commission last week. They also presented to the Urban Renewal Authority, and now they're presenting to you to get the buy-in of the Housing Advisory Board. Again, if they choose to move forward, they will submit everything as a single application package. However, there are different reviewing bodies for each of those applications. So the minor subdivision is reviewed administratively by staff. The major development plan and variance are heard by City Planning Commission, and the major development plan is then also heard by City Council. Then they'll go into the building permit process for the grading permit and building permits, which are reviewed again by staff and by Pikes Peak Regional Building Department and any other review agencies. So this is another visual of that. Here we are with our preliminary review of our concept plan. Then they will submit all of these applications to staff. We will do a thorough analysis to make sure each of the applications are complete. And we will review and make a decision on those applications, which we are authorized to decide upon, and then forward for further review, the major development plan and variance. We actually probably don't need to go through the findings and review criteria because that is specific to Planning Commission. The Housing Advisory Board is unique in that they really are looking at the project holistically and how it meets the housing needs of Manitou Springs. And so from here, we'll allow the applicant to do a presentation, like I said, provide some color, and then if the board has any questions, either for staff or for the applicant, feel free to ask those questions, and then you'll decide if you either A, want to maybe write a letter in support of the application. You can write a letter against the application, you can stay neutral. So that is entirely up to you, but with that, I think if you have any questions for me, we'll go ahead with that and then we'll call up the applicant. All right. Going over to John.
I believe he's going to introduce the project to you all, and we'll make introductions of ourselves and roles and explain more.
All righty, can you guys hear me okay? All right, so good afternoon, everyone. I guess evening now. So my name is John Block, and I'm the development manager with Paragon, based here in Colorado. I live up in Lakewood on the west side of Denver. My father, Rich Block, is on Zoom as well. He's the president of Paragon. So we thought it'd be helpful to start with a little history on the project, since this is the first time connecting with most of you. We've spoken with Chelsea and Fred many times, and talk about how we got to where we are now. And then I'll pass it to Rich to add a little bit of color on the design and anything I missed. And then, as Chelsea mentioned, happy to answer any questions at the end. So on the history side, we purchased the property about 2 years ago. My aunt and uncle own a shop in downtown Manitou Springs. I've been there for a long time. So we knew the potential of Manitou Springs. I knew this pocket of Manitou just east of 24, where the fund is located, has had its issues, really dating back to the Highway 24 installation in the 1960s, bifurcating the city. But obviously this site in particular needed some improvement and investment to really accomplish that, what we thought was possible. And so when we stepped in, the hotel was in a much worse place. The city had revoked the business license of the motel. It was poorly run, drugs, crime. The structure was actually illegally built, had asbestos everywhere. It was a mess. So with the help of the URA, we demolished the building. We completed the asbestos abatement. And, while we haven't built anything yet, I think Manitou is in a better place. I don't think I need to tell you all the stuff that we uncovered during the demolition, but it wasn't good. So again, that was about 2 years ago. Since then, we've really considered almost every use, commercial, retail. We've been in discussions with grocery stores, coffee chains. Unfortunately, on the commercial retail side, right now, most companies are hesitant to sign leases, and it's a handful of reasons for that. Interest rates, general uncertainty in the marketplace, construction costs are too high. So at this point, we really feel like housing is the greatest opportunity on this site. And we've heard from many people in the community that really most of the working staff in shops in downtown Manitou Springs are just very few places for them to live. So we initially were looking at affordable housing options. So capital A affordable housing tax credit deals, which I'm sure are at the mercy of the state and government funding sources. And really, after digging deeper, we connected with a handful of affordable housing developers. We learned that we aren't in the proper census tract to get their required incentives. There's actually a 30% bonus, which about 95% of the deals that are done on the tax credit side are done in those census tracts. So it really makes the deal almost impossible to pencil. In addition to that, I'm sure you're aware, there's application cycles that are done just once a year. So it usually takes 2 to 3, depending on the program that you're in, 2 to 3 application cycles. And then there's really no guarantee that it'll be approved, if ever. So unfortunately, just given some of the timing constraints on our side, we just can't wait that long. And again, I don't know if the numbers would even pencil if we're not in the right census tract. So that really brings us to what we're showing you now. And Dad, I think you've got the site plan up there. So this is the potential for a 78 unit for rent project that's really designed to meet the needs of the working staff of Manitou, and what we're calling an attainable housing project, which it basically means it's a high-end project, but it doesn't have all the amenities of, some of the really nice apartment buildings in downtown Colorado Springs. We're not going to have a pool. We won't have a big movie theater. But obviously the intent here is to keep rents as low as possible. So again, it's still going to be nice. Every unit will have a balcony. It'll have a small fitness room, a patio feature on the third story, which we can talk about in a little bit, and I'll let Rich comment on that. But we hired Kephart as an architect a few months ago, and they helped us put some plans together, but they've been awesome. Candidly exceeded our expectations. They're one of the best architectural groups I've worked with, truthfully. Simply because of the research that they do of the city, of the community, and then using that research to influence the design. So they've done a lot of diligence really into the history of Manitou and Native American influence, which we try to incorporate. It really feels like a clean design, but appreciating some of the fun pieces of what was there previously. So the pylon sign that's out front, we intend to keep that and renovate that. The roadside architecture, the turquoise colors, which maybe Dad, you can flip to the next slide. Kephart loves to say that the building should feel like it grew out of the location and the place. And I think you can see that in the colors and the shapes of the awnings, the renovated sign, as I mentioned. So I think they've done a great job, and I hope you agree. One of the biggest feedback items that Chelsea mentioned throughout the process that we received from people in the community and in this corridor is the fear around the canyoning effect along Manitou Ave from the Holiday Inn Express across the street, and that the complaint was basically that there was an intimidating presence with it being so high and so close to Manitou Ave. And so we've done a handful of things to address that. One, we step back the third story along Manitou Ave, meaning there's only 2 stories that will be visible from Manitou Ave when you're driving by. And it'll step back about 10 feet as you move south with the patio feature that'll likely be amenity space. The second thing we did was we turned the buildings to be perpendicular to Manitou Ave. We had considered a couple other plans, which I'll let Rich comment on, that had more frontage along Manitou Ave, again, to help prevent canyoning and to reduce the frontage. And honestly, to just prevent a more urban feel, which we knew the community didn't want. And then the last thing we did was we kept the buildings under the maximum building height. So there are only 3 stories only on the south side of the building at 35 feet. So that gets me to my last point, and then I'll hand it over to Rich. But we really tried to keep everything within the current code as much as possible and isolate it down to just one variance on density. So again, everything should fit within the code, but unfortunately 20 units per acre really prevents us from doing anything other than expensive units, and candidly may not even work for that. So it's simply a function of construction costs, right? The bigger the building is, the easier it is to spread operating expenses across the building and to keep construction costs per unit low. So we've done our best to really address these concerns, and we're hoping to walk away today with your support, and certainly open to feedback. But obviously Manitou really needs the housing, and we hope we can make this work. So with that, I'll pass it over to you, Dad, to talk a little bit more about the design and the evolution of how we ended up here.
Sure. So thank you. A quick introduction. My name is Rich Block with Paragon Realty. My address is 8700 North Street, Suite 310 in Fishers, Indiana. And as my son John mentioned, it was really through him that we got introduced to the site in Manitou. He originally was involved with a group that was looking to renovate the motel, and long story short, that didn't work out. But I think we felt very strongly about the site itself, like what Manitou really is, and just the character of the community. And so we've tried hard to be very sensitive to what we've heard from the community about some of the concerns, and some of those were mentioned by John Michael. But we elected to not have the Kephart architect team participate, just purely from a cost standpoint. So we'll probably not do as good a job giving you an overview. Chelsea's heard, I think Fred has heard. We've got 2 primary principals involved with Kephart, and as my son mentioned, they really tried hard to look at other buildings in the Manitou area, other buildings in the Colorado, state, looking at some of the history, being sensitive about Native American influence in the area, and in fact, that design that you see, I'm going to slide down to that. I hope you can see this, but the integration of the turquoise, the blending of that into the sign, and then developing a canopy out along the front to break up some of the massing, but really again to give that striated kind of feature to the canopy that resembles some of the jewelry, the Native American jewelry that was involved. And I think they've done something here that really, it seems to fit well. As my son mentioned, and I'll go back to the overview, the site plan. I'll just give you some quick facts, because really our goal here is, while we're doing this residential apartment dwelling, we want it to be really affordable, little a affordable to the community. And targeting specifically the workforce that lives and works around the area, providing that opportunity for them to live in what will be a nicer property, but also one that is proximate to where they work. So in the left-hand side, I don't know if you can see my cursor, but the project summary, I'll just direct you to that. As he mentioned, there's a total of 78 units. We actually meet the required parking. Just a couple of features I think Chelsea mentioned. The area that you see that's kind of cross-hatched here below buildings 1 and 2 is sorry. I'm not very skilled at some of this online, so bear with me a little bit, but that is for underground parking. Behind that, there'd be like a tandem parking spot that would also be afforded to people, but the balance of the parking would then be in this parking field that you see here, around, what will be kind of landscape islands and things. Along the south side of the site, that fronts 24, you all probably know there's some, not huge, but some topography to the site. So there'll be a retaining wall that will be built there, and then parking will be on the south side of the site. It was very important to a number of people when we started talking to them. There was concern, I think, from maybe council, but citizens, about what happened with the new Holiday Inn, and the fact that that was brought up close to Manitou Avenue, and the feeling that it was just too close. So that's where, if you refer down to this blocking diagram, and please understand this concept plan is one, as Chelsea mentioned, where we were asking for feedback from the Planning Commission. So this is enough information we hope allows you to get a sense of what the project is, but there's a lot more detailed design work that'll go into it. But I do think this blocking diagram gives you a little bit of a sense of what you'll see. So this area here, is my cursor visible to you all?
Yes.
Okay, great. In any event, there will be a limit of just 2 stories fronting Manitou Avenue. So both of these buildings will have just 2 stories visible, and then we'll have a balcony that will be accessible to the residents, that will overlook Manitou Avenue. We had considered, actually, as John, I call him John Michael. He's now professionally known as John. I just always, that's what we named him, and that name sticks. But in any event, we considered basically turning that site plan 90 degrees. And there are benefits to that. However, when we heard some of the concern about not having the massing being on Manitou Avenue, we landed on this site plan that really minimizes the amount of frontage the buildings have on Manitou Avenue. These 2 areas will be what fronts Manitou. The sign has been kept as we mentioned, and will receive landscaping and some sort of gardening area, if you will, around that. But then we'll have plantings in the parking lot so that we lessen the view of just, asphalt parking there. And I think what Kephart has done, the actual building architecture will be a like a hardy plank or I forget the term they said, cementized. It's basically a cement product, but it's a very durable, long-lasting product that is going to be like the paneling that you see on there. We actually added some windows from some of the early feedback from the planning staff along Manitou Avenue. I would tell you that I don't get overly focused on exactly what this is. There'll be some tweaks to it, but I think it will very similarly resemble what you're looking at. There are the patios that I hope you can see visible here on each side. That's intended to allow people to see Garden of the Gods, the incline and Pikes Peak, so that we maximize viewing area. The intention here is that the units, I'm going to go back to the units that we have planned for in here. So if you see the bottom of this grid, we have a total of 10 studios, 1-bedroom studios, 69. So the bulk of them would be 1-bedroom units. And then 44, no, I'm sorry, that's 40%. What is that, percentile? What is that? Oh, that's parking spots. I'm referring to the wrong grid. Sorry. 10 total studios, 46 1-bedrooms, and 22 2-bedrooms, totaling up to 78 units. We are, questions that arise that you may be asking yourself, or, what are the targeted rents? And I would say to you, these are targeted because we're still in the process of pulling numbers together and everything. But our goal is to deliver the studios in the 1,300 range. That'll be the starting, and so something below 1,400. The 2-bedrooms will be the more expensive units. We're projecting those at around 1,900. So I'd say that's going to be the range. And to offer some perspective on that, from what we've seen and heard, while that may still be or may be perceived as higher, we've learned that many apartments that are renting in the Manitou area have rents of $2,000, $2,500 per month for those units. So we think that this does hit the mark for being affordable or attainable, being able to provide housing to the workers that are living and want to live around Manitou. One of the encouraging things that we've heard, you probably know, there's a bit of softness in the overall apartment market, particularly in Colorado Springs. In fact, I think there's like a 2-month free rent that most apartment communities are now offering, and just a number of new units that are coming to market. But really, that's a very different market than Manitou. And we've been working with the Griffiths Blessing people. They would likely be involved to lease and manage the project for us. And they absolutely feel strongly the market is strong in Manitou and very differentiated from Colorado Springs. So it really makes us feel good in what is certainly a tougher development market. But we certainly hope that what we've done, the consideration that we've made for placement, the consideration that the Kephart guys have come in, that have put into the style and orientation of the building, that the softening of that along Manitou Avenue really is something that the city as a whole can be proud of. I know this is purely an advisory board, but as was mentioned earlier, we do intend, I will tell you that it was a lively hearing at the Planning Commission, more so than we expected. But in the end, we got a 4-3 vote of support. I think that part of the challenge within the community, and maybe this, is that there's been some recent code changes that were made, I think put in place maybe in that 2-year timeframe, 2 years ago. And you know, the fact that, you know, we're asking a variance. Well, in fact, we tried hard to limit the request to just one variance. And I hope you can appreciate the reason being is just there is an important economic balancing that gets done for these projects, making sure that the number of units are efficient there, and that's both from a construction and operating standpoint, but also adequate to ultimately deliver rents that are the most affordable to the community. So honestly, after the meeting, you know, we did a little bit of a step back, but our goal and hope is to file formally for the variance, and that hearing would be in November, as we understand it. We have a filing that gets done by early part of April, but certainly our hope is that you all can offer your support to the Planning Commission. I think we're going to be prepared to offer our rationale why we believe it's supported, and I think quite frankly we just weren't as aware of what some of the questions were from at least a few of the members there of the Planning Commission. But I do think any extra support that the community can provide to the Planning Commission and then potentially the council would be very much appreciated. So with that, I will stop and allow for you all to ask any questions you may have, but thank you again.
So I have just a few questions. Like, I appreciate the layout, everything, how it looks. I'm curious about how you came to, like, I understand the development process, how you get to the number, but I find it challenging when you're calling that attainable housing and small A affordable housing, because when you talk about workers in the community, did you do any research to see how much people make on average in the shops and restaurants around town? Because I would be shocked if it was more than $20 an hour, which ends up being about $41,000 a year. And if you're having stable housing costs, that would be approximately $1,100 per month for the baseline for a 1-bedroom. So it still feels considerably higher. And so I'm just curious about what kind of research and things you did along that level.
Yeah, sure. I can chime in on that. I mean, so we've definitely done a market study around what's available and what units are renting for. And I think what you're commenting on is maybe the sad reality of it's, you know, $40,000 of income makes it tough to afford apartments. So it's close, and there are ways you can manage around that in terms of allowing for slightly higher percentage of the overall income. But we haven't put an extensive study together around the economics of it. I'm sure there are some that make more than 40,000, but it's a fair point. Dad, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
No, I think that's well said.
What is your estimated square footage per unit? I didn't see that anywhere.
Dad, you want to put that on the unit? It's on
Sure. I think I've got it on a separate sheet. The studios are the smallest, and they're just over 504 square feet. I mean, these are estimates from the architects now. So there'll be some variation, but the 1-bedrooms are 624 square feet, and the 2-bedrooms are 804 square feet. So they're smaller, efficient units.
Yeah, it's very small.
Okay, you probably have you go first.
Well, I'll start with a couple. Well, first, just kind of a following up on Crystal, could you repeat what the targeted rents were? One more time. I think you said that, Rich, in your presentation.
I did, yes. Targeting rents, lowest end would be the studios, and our goal is to deliver those in the something below 1,400 in the 1,300s. The 2 bedrooms, I'm actually looking at the pro forma, around 1,900. So that they'll range from that. The 1 bedrooms are likely going to be in that 1,550 range. Maybe, goals. We're going to try and deliver them as cost effectively as we can, but that's just what costing drives for those rents.
Great, thank you. And I do just want to say thank you for being here and coming up with this proposal and idea, because we all, we're probably going to ask some hard questions about affordability and otherwise, but we've all been waiting for a proposal for housing in Manitou, right? And I think of all things, the discussion of higher density and requesting of a variance is definitely something that I support. I won't speak for the HAB. I guess I'll just start with some clarification questions. Are you planning on being the owner operator once this is constructed, or would you be selling it or having a third party come in and operate it?
Right now, we would not be the operator. We would be the owner. So we mentioned this in the Planning Commission. I don't have direct connections in Colorado, but I think, assembled a team, starting with the Kephart architect team to do the design work. CSI is a general contractor specializing in residential apartment construction. They're out of Colorado Springs. Maybe you all know them. I think they're one of the largest volume builders. And in fact, when we talked to the president of the firm, he commented, really honestly, he's turning away work, but because this is so proximate, and in his mind, and it is, a bigger project in some respects, but in his mind, it's a small project. But he said, because it's proximate, he'd love to be involved. So he's given us pricing. And then lastly, I mentioned we will have Griffith's Blessing, also out of Colorado Springs, pretty large manager of apartment properties throughout the state, and actually now I guess into Kansas and some other states. But they're again located in Colorado Springs, and they even have a team that focuses on, again, this is a smaller project for people. Just to put this in perspective, for most people who are doing an apartment community, they want to do more than 200 units, because that's where you can gain true both construction and then ultimately operating efficiencies. So 78 is small, but what's great about Griffith's Blessing is they have a team that basically a manager, an apartment manager, will have the responsibility over 2 or 3 different mid to small sized properties. And so long as they're proximate, they're basically they might spend half a day, 4 days a week or something like that at the property. They're there to make showings. So I really feel like we have a great team that we intend to align ourselves with.
Does Paragon what do you typically develop? Is it residential or commercial?
Most of what we do is commercial, but we've done probably 4 to 5 residential apartment projects ourselves. We also are currently managing a student housing project right now down in Clemson, South Carolina. But most of what we do is retail and office and industrial.
Thank you. I
You're
have more
welcome.
questions. Pass the mic for now.
Michael, do you have any questions before I start?
No, I don't have anything to add. Thank you.
Okay. So I just had a couple questions. Let's see. Yeah, like Aaliyah, I appreciate the proposed concept. I like that angled design, that setback. I also appreciate our city, like Aaliyah said as well. We need new, safe housing opportunities for rent. So I think that's really awesome. And again, I know you looked a little bit with affordable. I just had some questions if you, let's see, this was, look, I had written down a couple things. So this is one question. Did you look into any CHAFA funding opportunities, especially the 4% non-competitive tax credit? Just curious what due diligence you completed to determine that you can't afford to build affordable housing.
Yeah, so I can chime in on that. So we're not affordable developers. So we knew we would have to align ourselves with an affordable developer. And I think we spoke to 3 different individuals, one of which has done some stuff in Colorado Springs, the other a ton of projects across Colorado. So on the 4% deal, and I'm not an expert, but I'm just going to regurgitate to the best of my abilities. On the 4% deal, you either need to be in the proper census tract, which is based on income of the broader area. And I could pull up a map and send it to you after if you want, but basically all the census tracts that receive the bonus are in Colorado Springs. And probably 90 to 95% of 4% deals today are in those census tracts that get the bonus. And so unfortunately, it's kind of tough to make the numbers pencil on a market rate deal. It's even harder to make the numbers pencil without that 30% bonus. We also looked at a 9% deal, which you may know is a little bit more challenging to get awarded, but there's more funding. Unfortunately, the amount of funding is capped. And so the imputed land value, and maybe I'm giving you more info than you want, but the imputed land value is basically 0. So yeah, it makes it a little challenging to make either of those deals work. And then you couple that with the application being once a year, and we have timelines that we need to meet with the URA. It just unfortunately isn't going to work for us. Not to say it's impossible, but it's just challenging. Dad, anything you'd want to add?
I don't think so.
Okay, appreciate you and then, so let's see, what would be the most significant code change the city could make that would benefit your development as it's proposed now, or if it wasn't a project?
Wow.
Do you want to take that, or do you want me to?
You know, that's almost a staff question, but we've learned more about the code. And just for the record, I'm a former city councilor in the community that I live in. I've served on the planning staff. We went through a comprehensive plan update when I first got in office, and I was heavily involved in a number of committees there. And I can't speak to what all was done. That is what sort of input was obtained from the public, but also from the development community. I'd offered, I think I'd mentioned to Chelsea at one point that we would love to be a participant if there are things that the city at least would like to revisit, with their code. But I do think certainly density, to answer your question, if you would like to see more housing be developed, there has to be a provision that allows for that a little more easily than what it is now. I mean, honestly, it was really an eye-opening meeting at the Planning Commission. And I think if the public can offer support to that would help. But I think there are ways in which other goals of the community can be, let's say, honored and respected, such as if the canyoning is such a concern, ways in which what we've done, but also with landscaping, ways to buffer developments that may occur. It was interesting too. I hope you guys can appreciate, Manitou is a very challenging area to develop. That is, you've got so much. I don't know if there's a flat site anywhere, right? I don't know how much contiguous block of land there is that would be available. But one of the questions would be, or that came up from the planning commission was, well, we like the project, just maybe not in this area. And I scratched my head to think, well, where else would it go? This to me seems like a very appropriate area. We actually compared the density of the units in both the Days Inn and the Holiday Inn Express, and the number of rooms. I don't have that. I apologize in front of me, but I'm going to do it off the top of my head. I think the Holiday Inn Express property, John Michael, was 1.25 acres or something like that. With
No, that
one,
was the Days Inn. Yeah, the Days Inn was it's an 1.5 acres or just under 1.5 acres, 50 rooms, which is about 34 units per acre, about what we're looking to do on our site. The Holiday Inn Express, on the other hand, has 63 rooms and is only 0.95 acres, which is 66 units per acre, almost double what we have. And we pulled an STR report, which is, I don't know how much you know about STR, but it's what a lot of the hotels report their rental revenue and occupancy, and then they combine that data, and then you can buy it for a report across 5 different hotels. So we pulled that for Manitou Springs, and across the 5 different hotels, I mean, they're above 90% occupied from the months of May to August, which isn't terribly surprising, just given the tourist-driven industry here. So effectively, we'd be operating like the Days Inn in the summer. Is kind of what you'd expect for our property.
there were some other things that were in the code that relate to there are some height limits there that I think could be relaxed a bit and allow for more density. I think if the goal is truly to encourage other, let's say, affordable housing or other development, and it doesn't necessarily have to be targeted more towards a workforce, but it may be seniors and other, that have a need and demand, that I think if the code could be revisited with input from the development community, ultimately the city will decide on what it would like to change. And I imagine, true, quite frankly, that the last thing they want to hear necessarily is that there are problems with the changes that recently got in place. I want to be sensitive to that. And I don't want to be perceived to be, I don't know, a part of the problem there with people. But really, honestly, it's people like you all, the residents, the other residents in Manitou, that, with constructive input, I think a lot can be done to benefit Manitou as a whole.
Thank you. I do appreciate that. I didn't mean to put you on the spot, and it is, since we are a community advisory and that is our goal is to increase affordable housing in our community. I think that's something that I wanted to know. So I appreciate you, doing that. And again, doing your due diligence and trying to see if you could build something affordable. And then I just had one other question. ADA units, is that required? Do you have any units that are like ADU compliant, or?
I think there will be some on the first floor. I honestly don't know the code there to speak to that.
Yeah, that's definitely a question for Kephart, but I know that they looked into that, and we'll have to meet code, of course. Yeah.
Okay.
And it's not the end of the world, right? If you don't have a tenant that needs the ADA unit, you can usually lease it out.
Of course.
Yeah.
Okay. And then this is probably like a fair housing question, and I don't know, maybe somebody knows the answer. Are you allowed, unless it's like a project development, are you allowed to prioritize current business owners, workforce? You're nodding your head no.
No.
I think you have to be real careful with any sort of not discrimination is the wrong word, but or prioritization, and again, I'm not an expert, but you guys can appreciate, race, sex, all those things that factor into making, and fair housing is something that has to be followed very strictly, you know?
Yeah, no, I just meant like, yeah, I know you would meet all, but it would be like finding the most qualified applicant. And can you?
I feel like
You can't.
Here's what we should do. Can you develop a list, a running list for us right now? We'll reach out to them first, if we're approved of people who would love to be in this project.
that Michael had looked into that with the question about prioritizing workers who work here, and it was a big no.
Okay, good. It was just a random question, so. But again, I appreciate it. I think in Manitou, we would benefit from more opportunities, especially that are safe and meet code, so. That's all the questions I have. You had some more, Leah? Oh, Michael has a question, okay.
Yeah, just to add, I know when we had that discussion before, it was a pretty resounding no. But I do know that it does exist in Summit County. So I do want to do a bit more research on that and maybe try to connect with someone in Summit County so we can find answers on how they're able to do that.
Are you talking about their, sorry, this is Chelsea, their workforce housing project?
Yeah. Yes, I am.
All right, we can look into that more, but I don't believe that it is advisable at the very least.
Yeah, I think it has to be like a project-based. Like Freedom Springs is project-based and it's only veterans, or like, like a project-based that's only seniors. Like, I think it has to have some different tie to it. So that was a random question.
So this was a number of years back, we had an affordable housing developer come out to look at the URA region and look at some of, this was back when, of course, the fund was still there and operating. But there were a handful of different motels that were for sale. And so they came out to kind of assess what they thought the viability of purchasing and redeveloping as affordable housing would be. And their main comment was the redevelopment costs would just be so way too high to remediate something like La Fun that had asbestos and all these challenges in it. But their comment was, if we had a nice flattish, clean lot that we could develop on, that would be a lot easier. And so I was surprised about, say, the census tract issue that came up. We haven't heard about that before. And so thanks for clarifying that that's relative to the CHAFA 4%. I mean, we should understand that more. But, I guess where I'm getting at a thought I had is that I think after today we'll have more questions on that research that you did. And I think there could be a lot of value to the Housing Advisory Board and the city to maybe understand and document the challenges and gaps that you identified in building, proposing an affordable project here, so that we can better understand that in terms of targeting future opportunities as well. I appreciate that you went through that process. And I think generally we'd like to understand that a little bit more. And I just think that there's some good value there in sharing that with us in the community and documenting it.
Yeah, happy to put together a summary of what we found and potentially even connect you with some of the folks that we talked about, because they can speak to it way more proficiently than I can. So happy to help.
And I think the other challenge, though, is real to us, which is, we have development timeframes stipulated in our agreement with the URA. And in fact, we just had to extend our agreement with them. But we're sensitive to that because they participated with us to help purchase the property and help abate the property. And obviously they made that investment with the idea that, it would be redeveloped. But the time frame is probably in that 1.5 time frame if you're successful to obtain credits. And with that uncertainty, we didn't even really have that. That was scary, about that prospect too. So you almost have to have the land owned, that is the developer, or certainly they have to have enough runway to apply and pursue these things to be patient, you know?
Well, that's one gap and challenge that,
Yes.
yeah, I think we can document as part of this.
Certainly, yes. But we'll be happy to work with you to help in any way we can.
Great. Yeah, I appreciate that. So one of my professional background and passions is in energy efficiency and sustainability in buildings and how that connects with affordability, right? Lower utility bills and you provide better comfort, you provide a better environment. Has there been, I know you're in the concept plan, but have you given any consideration to going above and beyond minimum code requirements to increase and expand on the efficiency characteristics of the building and also considering decarbonization and electrification strategies using electric appliances?
Well,
We have talked about, that I'll let you comment too, but we have talked about solar. And potentially adding that on the rooftop or potentially on, well, we talked about in certain areas of the parking lot if we wanted to do covered parking stalls at some point, but we still haven't run the numbers on that. There are also, I know, funding sources, green funding sources that you can tap into. So we want to pursue that. Of course, it'll come down to making sure the economics make sense, but if you're diligent, they a lot of times can be. So that's something we'll keep in mind. I don't know, Dad, if you want to add anything to that.
no, that's about what I would say is I think we have talked about it. We're open to integrating those sorts of things, but really honestly just need to be sensitive about the payback and the front end investment, because as probably you can appreciate, some of that is very front end loaded, and quite honestly, the costs are challenging enough with what we have under let's say a more traditional type of development, and so it's just the balance of all that. But we're very open to integrating what we can there.
Yeah, great. Thanks for that. And I'll say, so solar, yeah, big ticket item. There's a lot of other efficiency measures, whether it's, slightly better windows, insulation, greater levels of insulation, and the equipment system types that we would love. I think, speaking for myself, I would love to support this project particularly if it incorporated some additional efficiency considerations that supported more affordable utility bills for the residents. And I think we would love to work with you in the design process to identify what those are and what may be the most appropriate for the project. I personally have a lot of experience doing life cycle cost effectiveness analysis and considering things such as utility bill, electricity rate escalation, natural gas rate escalation, which comes into play when you're looking at electric appliances and how that's going to change over time. We know there's a lot of change and movement in our local utility, Colorado Springs utilities, in terms of where they're prioritizing their generation mix and whatnot. So I would love to see that a part of a formalized part of this plan moving forward.
Well, we'd welcome
Yeah,
you.
would love any help you can offer in that regard. Obviously, if you can do well and do good, that's obviously a good thing. So,
What is the time frame that you are looking at to put in your formal request? Like, how much time would we have to share some recommendations or ideas or anything like that?
I believe so. The hearing, and Chelsea can probably chime in here, but it was November 10th sticks in my mind. So that's going to be when the formal variance hearing is heard. Our hope is that the vote would either be reflective of what the concept plan vote was or better. And our hope is that we're going to make a case that we feel we've met the criteria, or at least the required 4 of 6 criteria for the variance. But regardless, I tried to make this point to the Planning Commission, variances don't always fit in an exact box. It's really more of an intention and a meeting of the greater need of Manitou, and that there is an alignment with adjacent uses, and it's not it, but there is a hardship. And if you will, the hardship is just how we're balancing the development of the site and ultimately to deliver the most affordable rents that we can to the community. So anyway, back to the schedule. If we have to file by October 11th, I believe, and the hearing is the 10th. I don't know, Chelsea, maybe you can jump in here and rescue me about what the dates are ahead for formal.
No, you nailed it. That those dates are specific to the density variance. If that is approved, my understanding is then the greater part of the design and engineering work will take place. Or if there needs to be an appeal process or whatever, but those are the dates that we have identified for that first step, or I guess second step at this point, but.
First formal step.
Yeah, obviously, if we get the variance, we'll feel a lot better. But I think we'll have, a couple months to strategize on, green initiatives as we put the plans together before we submit a final development package.
So what is your plan B if the variance doesn't go through?
I'm not sure if there are members of the URA there, but I think
John Maynard's here.
Oh, John. Okay, good enough. Well, honestly, immediately we'd probably just sit on it, but then secondly, we'd probably have to proceed to try and sell it to somebody. I don't even know who the buyer would be. There are provisions in our agreement with the URA to sell it, but quite frankly, if that occurs, I mean, the site's going to sit for a while. I mean, but people are going to face the same challenges, but I mean, I was a bit discouraged, quite frankly, at the Planning Commission, and those thoughts about what happens next were absolutely in my mind. And because we've tried to secure commercial retail uses. I suppose that could change, right? We could have somebody come along, in 2 months and say, hey, I want to do something. But we don't see that in the foreseeable future. We've tried, other, actually even more intense residential on this site, and we backed down to this. And again, this is 78, but I think the earlier plans had structured parking and somewhere around 120, 130 units on the site. So it was a much more intense, and we backed down, and this is what we've arrived at. But from here, if we're unsuccessful, it might be just a drop back and punt for us. I don't mean to say that in the wrong way, but I just don't know what the options are at that point.
Well, that would be sad if I feel like, and I'm speaking for myself, like, I think it's a need in the community, and I appreciate the time and design that you put into it. I'd be curious, John, do you have anything you were going to share, or were you just here to support? You can introduce yourself and for the record there.
I'll just make one quick comment. I do have some comments, but they're not pertinent necessarily to this application. And I'd rather that you give the input that you're going to make to the Paragon folks. And then if you'll allow me, I'll make some comments based on the comments I heard.
Okay. Anyone else? Aaliyah has one more question.
You said the meeting with the Planning Commission, there was a 4-3 vote and a lot of good discussion. What were the points of opposition that the commissioners brought up and discussed?
Do you mind if I
Hey, go ahead, Chelsea.
weigh in on what I heard?
Yes, please. Yes.
My belief is that much of the conversation focused around the technical ability of the commission to grant a variance based on those criteria. It much of the conversation did not focus around the merits of the project itself, but rather on the ability of the commission to work within the code that it had recently adopted.
Thank you.
So he had said that they met 4 of 6 criteria. Is that not enough?
We
Well-
were not able to legally review a variance that had not yet been applied for.
Oh,
They
I
were
see.
reviewing the concept plan, and staff and legal advice was to not discuss specifics. However, we just couldn't rein them in quite as much as we wanted to, so.
Okay.
And I guess when I was referencing that, we heard that that was one of the things that we needed to do to, ultimately have variance approved. So when we have our formal hearing, we do intend to address the criteria and at least articulate what we believe are the reasons why we meet the 4 of the 6 criteria.
Anything else? Okay. You can think of? There. Okay, so what's next, Chelsea? Do we,
So again, kind of defaulting to the quasi judicial structure. I think if anyone feels so inclined, they could make a motion that the Housing Advisory Board draft a letter, either in support, opposition, or opposition of the project, or if no one feels so inclined, then we can move on to item 2 of new business.
Are you RA representative? Were your comments about this project or were they on another? Okay, thank you. I wanted that clarification. I would be in support of writing a letter of support for this development, for the density variance. And also speaking to recommending and including some of the items that we have brought up, specifically efficiency and incorporating aspects that would lower utility bills as a way to meet affordability.
I'll second.
All in favor? Please raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
What's
And
Michael doing?
Michael, I think Michael was raising his hand.
Okay.
Yes, I did raise my hand. Thank you.
All right, so that looks like 3 and 1 against. So
Motion pass.
motion, yes, passes. And if anyone has any questions on specifics, feel free to reach out to me or to Fred. And we will also be who you will send that letter to when you are ready, though it will be not addressed to us. So we'll be the keeper of the letter once it's written.
Okay.
Well, thank you. Just to thank you as we close for taking some time, and certainly we appreciate any support you can offer.
Thank you for your time as well. And you
Welcome.
too, John Michael.
I will sign off. Thank you all.
Right. John, did you want to come on up to the microphone and state your name?
I'm
Or am I not?
Fred, do we have any concerns about having a conversation that has not been on the agenda?
Is there any agenda item on the agenda for general public comment or anything like that?
We did in the beginning, but maybe that got skewed.
So typically when we hear that, it is for the board or commission to receive comments, but not engage in a discussion. And so I guess we just need to be clear in terms of the Colorado Sunshine and Open Meetings Act, that we're doing things above board.
So I think considering the nature of the Housing Advisory Board, I think the board could grant some more latitude in having people provide comment to you if you would like, but I think it would be up to the board to decide whether you want to invite more comment or if you do not.
Yeah, I would support, it's related to,
Well, my comments are going to be related to some of the questions that you asked, and I was going to share some of my experience. So that's,
yeah, I would.
it's
appreciate
really
that.
not, it's pertinent to your discussion, but not to
Yes.
this project necessarily.
No, we would welcome that, because I think will help support even our letter.
Thanks for
future
humoring me.
things.
I appreciate it.
So if you want to just state your name
Sure.
and your address and then.
I'm John Maynard. I live at 1320 Indian Oaks Place, Manitou Springs. For those of you who are not familiar with me, I'm a retired planner. I worked in public office for 12 years and as a consultant for 36 or 7. And what I really wanted to talk about is density and the type of housing projects that you might envision in Manitou if there were higher density permitted. I worked on several senior projects as a consultant. They were either on 1 or 2 acres, and their density in terms of units was in between 60 and 80 units per acre. So if we wanted to have in our community senior housing, and we have a aging population, I think, that would like to continue to live in Manitou, then there has to be some ability to provide for density that would allow assisted living and end of life type living situations. So that was my first comment. The second comment is in discussing density with Ethan Schaefer, who's now no longer here. He assisted me in figuring out what the density is of the Barker House. And I got the information from him. It's, you look it up here. The site is 0.377 acres and it has 48 units for a density of 126 units per acre. So, and that's not an inappropriate development. It's obviously a reuse of an old motel or hotel, but in my opinion, it's not an inappropriate type of use for our community. And it does provide, I think, primarily elderly housing in that facility. The last comment I'll make is relative to variances. And when I built my house, I had an architect design it, built the house that I wanted to live in. I needed 3 variances in order to get it, which were approved by the Planning Commission, and I built my house and have lived in it for 30 some years. And I've been a planner for almost 50 years. Codes are written to prevent bad development. They're not necessarily written to promote good design. And I think there needs to be some flexibility in our code that would allow for good design when we recognize good design. It's easy to say this, but not easy to do it, because to write that kind of language is subjective. And each of us will have our own subjective views on what is good design and what isn't. But when we collectively see it, we ought to be able to approve it in some way. So those are my comments.
I appreciate
Thank you
that.
for
Thank
letting
you.
me speak.
Thank you for those insights. That was very helpful. Excellent. All right, well, looking over here at your agenda, we only have about, I mean, if I'm trying to stick with time, less than 15 minutes for our next agenda item, which was looking at our 25 goals. Do we want to try to dabble around in those, or would anyone like to move them to another time? Thank you again.
I would prefer to move them to another time, but I'm also available.
If that's a motion, I will second it.
Okay, that's a motion.
All in favor of that? Aye. I don't know if we need to vote on that, but
Moving an agenda item.
yeah, moving an
Formally.
agenda item.
It
till
makes me
next-
comfortable. I appreciate it. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yes, it was a lot of content to absorb, and I think
Yeah.
I would like to be able to just sit on what we experienced and heard. And I don't know, I mean, yeah, do we have any, what else is next? Anything? Oh, reports, staff reports. We could, if any old business, we don't need to really get into that either. Any staff reports?
Yes. This is Zach Davison. He is our newest planner. Along with Zach, we have also hired a administrative assistant and a new community services officer. So Zach, if you'd like to say anything.
Thanks for having me here. I look forward to future meetings.
Thanks for being here.
And I had met him the other day. So Fred, will he be our main liaison person?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's the tentative plan right now. That he would be your liaison or your staff liaison.
Okay.
Yep.
Excellent.
So once we get him up to speed with everything, so which shouldn't take long. He's a fast learner.
I'm hoping it's okay for me to ask this. At the last meeting, Ethan had been working on figuring out how we could properly share within the Sunshine Law, like kind of the working spreadsheet that we all have our tasks and responsibilities for with our plan. And I was just curious if there had been any movement made on that so that we could have a improved way to move forward.
I was not aware of that specific task. So let me think about that a little bit. I know we've talked before about having like the repository and how to keep all of those things legal. In terms of legality, we also need to meet ADA accessibility laws. And so that might be a little challenging right now, but maybe once we have the discussion about goals, we can talk about the framework for kind of shepherding those forward, if that seems appropriate.
Thank you.
Thanks for bringing that to our attention.
Maybe for me personally, what's the question? What are you trying to achieve?
Oh, Michael has his hand raised. I wonder if he has an answer.
Yeah, I don't have an answer, but I'm just curious, are none of the other commissions or boards like keeping documents or tracking their goals or progress?
They, the two other commissions that the planning department supports are quasi judicial boards. And so they work primarily on reviewing caseload. And those cases are presented, about a week before the meeting. They're posted publicly, things like that. This is a working advisory board. And so the structure is a little different. And I'm not as familiar with the guidelines around public documents for like as work product. So I need to educate myself on that a bit.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, they're not actively trying to further goals the way you are.
Okay, that makes sense.
For your question, like Michael and Aaliyah made a beautiful chart, beautiful Excel worksheet with what we're all supposed to be doing to keep us on time. And one of the challenges is that we don't have a common share that to essentially hold ourselves accountable. And there's not a way for Michael and Aaliyah to say, hey, everybody, these are the things you need to be working on.
Okay.
And go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, I have some thoughts, but I'll probably run them past our attorney and see what we can do. But I don't think that's not an insurmountable problem.
And I'll just share that we created a while back a Google Drive account, and we still have it. It's not being used. It's not, I guess it's active, but it's not being used. And so how we used it before was for that purpose, and also to kind of store and share resources and different documents. And I know a Google, whatever the venue is like, we're happy with any solution, but those type of drives could be made public. And so maybe that's part of an option.
Just to affirm what Chelsea said about there is a new law that has gone into place for all municipalities on making everything an ADA accessible document. And it is a lot of extra work until you really understand how that process works. And so I appreciate that that is a significant challenge
Yeah.
in the mix of that.
Yeah, I work with that too. And
Okay,
so
sorry.
I get it. Yeah.
But we
I
do
get
have a
it,
new
that's the
ADA
barrier.
coordinator working for the city as well. So we can have a conversation with him. But yeah, if anyone wants to share that document with us, I don't know where Ethan would have kept it. I can find it, or someone can send it, and then we'll find out. But yes, thank you for bringing that to our attention.
I think Michael has it, just FYI.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's the most recent version, but I have a version that I can send to you, Chelsea.
I think you have the latest version, Michael,
Okay,
I-
perfect.
since you took it and made some edits.
Okay.
Thank you. That'd be great. So then we can work on, think about, yeah, like our goals next time we meet. And in the like sort of be thinking about that too. And then I don't know, am I allowed to ask why my colleague here didn't say yes or to the project, or is that?
You can ask, you can refuse to answer.
And you can refuse to answer.
It is entirely up to you, but if you do feel like answering, I think it's probably better that it's on the record rather than being discussed outside of a public forum. It's
Okay.
just-
Crystal, if you choose.
Yeah, so I will admit, I got a little hung up on him using the words attainable, and that it's not attainable housing, in my opinion. And considering our workforce, like the way that it was marketed, and then it also felt like they were really pushing hard on, we're the only ones who could do this and it has to be our way. It felt like a strong arm to me. And I think that there are some affordable developers that we haven't talked to, and I understand they are the owners, but I just have a lot more questions and I don't have everything in my head to express those accurately at this moment, if that makes sense. So I didn't feel comfortable saying yes. It's not absolutely, I do not support it. I just have a lot of questions, and it also kind of sounded like they were planning to do a cheaper build, because he kept talking about the efficiencies, lowering all the costs. And then when you look at the size of those units, those are very small units. So I'm like, what's your marketing strategy to have a mediocre apartment complex at a higher cost? It all just didn't make sense to me in my head. So I couldn't say yes in that moment, but I'm not absolutely opposed to it, if that is helpful.
Yes, that is helpful.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it was from URA, but there was couple different projects, and maybe you all know that they had looked at like doing somebody had come. Like, I think it might have been, I don't know, I don't want to say the name, but somebody had proposed a senior. And it's that darn density and variance that you can't build up as much. So I think it is maybe I would say in the arena we're in now. I mean, yeah, that's probably the project that can happen. And yeah, if they just leave, maybe it just sits there, right?
Yeah, and I appreciate the variance thing, and I
Yeah.
feel like that is something, like variances can be granted. And so I don't, like, it's not an absolute no, it's just there are other questions.
Yeah, if I could add on there, I would say, Crystal, I definitely agree with basically everything you said. I would say I'm more of a conditional yes. I do think, yeah, 1,300 for a studio is not even close to affordable, attainable, any type of workforce oriented housing. And I do think the worst thing isn't that it stays empty for a few more years. I think the worst thing is like if a Starbucks ends up there or something like that. And then it's a Starbucks, which we don't need in Manitou. And then it's also developed and can't become something better later on. So I think that's something at least to consider. Is what's going to happen if it's not this project.
Yeah, I think those are all excellent points, and we should include, the motion was to include the items that we would support them considering more, and there's I think a handful of good things that were brought up here. I mean, so generally we want a consideration of other aspects that can improve the affordability, which can be, the energy efficiency. It can be also changes to the design and the plan and all that.
So on that note, you said Aaliyah, you'll start crafting the letter, and then
I didn't, but I will.
and then how soon then do we need to get it to, how do we, well, we won't have enough time to review it at our meeting. How could we review it?
You would,
Because
there's an October meeting.
I thought his meeting was on the 11th though.
No, that's his deadline to submit the variance to me.
Oh, okay, got it.
They're targeting.
Okay,
Yes, because of public notice deadlines, we could not get them on the October agenda for planning commission. So they are targeting November.
okay. So Aaliyah, thank you. If you have time, and then
That was good strategy
you
there,
like that,
Chair.
Aaliyah? I like Aaliyah, did you? And then Aaliyah, can it get shared? Can she send it to you and have us even see it before, obviously, the meeting?
Yes, so we can include it as part of the packet for the next meeting. Again, with the items for the 2025 goals that yeah,
Perfect.
So
For the next agenda. So I already have the next agenda set.
yes, so Aaliyah, if you could have that maybe by the 11th, October 11th, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, sure.
And I can, help you with it too.
Can I ask that we also put on the agenda for the October meeting a review of our 2024 process so that we have, I feel like shouldn't be making 2025 goals till we've evaluated our work in 2024.
Yeah, I think that was all kind of part of the documentation for the 2025 goals. We provided kind of the notes from the retreat last year, and then I think the idea was to talk about what had been achieved and how that works into a work plan.
I apologize.
Oh.
I did not do my due diligence of reading everything before the meeting today, so that's my bad.
I sent it out yesterday. It's
Yes, I
working.
know. Yeah.
Fred, when do for the city council work session with the boards and commissions, how does that time frame work with us bumping this agenda item to the next month?
Yeah, I was thinking about that too. No, we're still gonna have time if you're able to discuss it in October. So, it looks like that I think tentatively, but I don't know if it's been moved yet or not, but right now, dates for board presentations to council is November 12th. And so that means, any goals or accomplishments that you would like to communicate to city council, you can discuss at your October meeting, then we can get that in, for the November presentation. So,
That will be great. Thank you. So yeah, so agenda for next month is reviewing the letter and approving that, or the letter of support. Reviewing, 2024 accomplishments, and then working on our 2025 goals, which those kind of carry over into our presentation to the city. So awesome. And then our budget, Fred and I had talked about it, but I'll make sure we also share that. It hasn't really changed from before because we haven't spent any money. So anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I submitted the numbers, basically kept the budget flat for all three boards and commissions and submitted that in my budget request. And I haven't heard back, but we were asked to keep a flat budget essentially. So, but that will be, if there are any additional funding requests that you have, that would be made in your presentation in November.
Okay.
But at this time, the request in the planning department budget is the same amount that the Housing Advisory Board had for 2024.
Okay. Perfect.
Can I ask one more question? Have we not received, has there not been any applications for the energy efficiency program at all this year?
There have not.
Okay, thank you.
Gonna be some things we'll talk about next month. Thinking about that. And I've had a couple people kind of reach out to be join our board. So maybe again, next meeting, we'll have a few people that will come and see if it's a good fit. All right. If I don't, anything else, we will adjourn the meeting 7:04 p.m. Thank you, everyone.
Good night, everyone.